Hey everybody, I'm Karston.
And I'm Brionne.
And today we'll be reviewing the commander cards for Journey into Nyx.
Like Born of the Gods, Journey into Nyx leaves something to be desired as far as commander cards go, but there are definitely a couple of epic cards we need to talk about.
We'll first take a look at some of the honorable mentions, and then we'll dive into our top 10 most relevant cards in Commander. And so let's start us off with a group of cards that are great for tokens: Ajani's Presence, Launch the Fleet, and Hall of Triumph. A lot of the cards we have in our honorable mentions, and one or two that are in our top 10, have Strive. And so we have two Strive cards that are great for white weenie decks or red-white aggro decks. Ajani's Presence gives your guys Indestructible, which is fantastic. And then Launch the Fleet, you produce more of those dudes. And then Hall of Triumph is a anthem effect for everybody.
And then we have a group of removal cards: Banishing Light, Deicide, Quarry Colossus, Reprisal, and Oppressive Raise. So Quarry Colossus is actually my favorite. I know a lot of people are getting excited for Deicide in Standard. It's not that great in Commander. Honestly, I'd rather play Revoke Existence or Return to Dust, but it is an instant, and if you have a lot of gods and you just need that third white card to deal with gods, then it's going to be great.
Next, we have a couple of Steely Face cards. You know how much I love Steely Face cards. Daring Thief and Hypnotic Siren. Yeah, Daring Thief is kind of like a switcheroo on a body. You have to work for it a little bit, but Daring Thief is awesome. And Hypnotic Siren, what's cool about Hypnotic Siren is that you can take control of something, you buff it, and then if they decide to kill that thing you took control of, you still get a creature out of it. So Hypnotic Siren is also really neat.
So, Skye Bond is really cool, and I'm going to be totally honest, I'm not creative enough to see how to break this card yet. I mean, I know any card that lets you flicker dudes is awesome, because blink decks are a huge archetype in Commander. So, let us know in the comments section below if you've figured out what to do with Skye Bond. I just know that it seems like it has a lot of potential.
Next up is a card that I actually really like a lot, and it's Hour of Need. Once again, another one of those Strive cards that I was telling you about earlier. Hour of Need is a really flexible card. If you're playing a deck filled with tokens and stuff, you can upgrade your tokens to 4/4 flyers. If you're playing against somebody who has lots of really huge flyers, like, you know, Chroma, things like that, you can downgrade their flyer to a little 4/4 dude. It's not like you're playing Curse of the Swine, where you're actually turning them into little piggies, but maybe if you play in a play group where politics is a big deal, you can just remove their big creature and they still get a 4/4, so maybe they won't be as mad at you. Another cool thing is, since you can target multiple things, you can give your opponents 4/4s, and then you can give yourself 4/4s to block their 4/4s. So Hour of Need's really flexible, and I think it should be played.
Next we have Aegis of the Gods and Eidolon of Rhetoric. These are two really corner case white cards. They're both cards that have been done before. Aegis of the Gods is basically True Believer, except for it gives you hexproof. And then Eidolon of Rhetoric is Rule of Law on a body. I'd rather play Rule of Law, and as far as Aegis of the Gods go, I'm a big fan of Witchbane Orb, because it's so much harder to remove than a little body. But some white decks would rather have bodies than enchantments or artifacts. And so we know those cards are good, and these are going to go into a lot of probably mono-white decks is where they really shine.
Next, we have two Recursion cards, Pull from the Deep and Reviving Melody. Pull from the Deep is like a Mystic Retrieval or a Call to Mind, but kind of on steroids, because it gets you an instant and a sorcery. The only downside is you can't keep reusing it, because you're going to have to exile it after you're done with it. And then Reviving Melody, very much like Remember the Fallen from the Scars of Mirrodin block, except Reviving Melody is going to be getting you enchantments, which are better in green. Two cards that are very similar to cards we've seen before, but cards that I think are going to slip into Commander decks very nicely.
And next we have a really awesome card, Scourge of Fleets. If you can't tell, I like this whole cycle that it's part of, because I like Quarry Colossus too. He's awesome. You could probably play him in a 2-color deck. Any more than that, you'd be pushing it. But mono blue, you probably have at least 5 or 6 islands, if not the full 7. And you just bounce everything. Cataract Leviathan gets played enough, and it bounces everyone's creatures. This guy bounces your opponent's creatures. If you want to be the ultimate troll, you can just pair him with Deadeye Navigator and everyone punches you in the face because they can't ever stick a creature ever.
Next, we have Master of the Feast. These last few sets, they're just like, hey, Nekasar players, let's just give you a tool. A tool that also happens to swing for 5 damage flying. We have Master of the Feast now, and we have Fate Unraveler. Who knows what else they're just going to hand to Nekasar players.
Okay, no set would be complete without an awesome, awesome dragon. So we have Spawn of Thraxes, and it's good. Like I said, I love this cycle. He can hit a creature or a player. I hope you're playing mono-red dragon tribal, because then that's awesome. But even if you're not playing dragons, even if you're just playing mono-red or green-red, this is going to be good too.
Next up, we have Twin Flame. Twin Flame probably has one of my favorite, if not my favorite, artwork in the entire set. It's really cool, and it's another great Strive card. It does something that Red loves to do, and that is create copies. There's lots of different applications for this card. This card's going to see play, probably not just in red decks, but in any deck that plays red. It's not kiki-jiki or anything, but it's really good.
Next up, we have Eidolon of Blossoms, and I play Legacy Enchantress. I love the archetype, but the great thing about this card is a lot of Enchantress effects don't count themselves. So when you cast them, you don't draw a card. Eidolon of Blossoms takes care of that. So at the worst case scenario, it's going to enter the battlefield and draw you a card. In mono green decks, a body that comes with a card is playable. But then if you have any more enchantments, it's really going to shine.
Next up, we have the card that has first place for the award for most epic name. And that's Extinguish All Hope. Other than the epic name and the epic artwork, the card in Commander is kind of underwhelming. If you have this card and you don't have access to other mass removal spells, you should play Extinguish All Hope, because it's still great. It's still going to do what you wanted to do. It's still going to remove all the dudes from the table. I can say, though, that Nekasar would like this card, because Master of the Feast and Phantom Raveler are both enchantment creatures.
Solidarity of Heroes, I love because I have a Marath deck. And this is going straight into Marath as soon as I can find a copy of it. I'm just going to double the number of +1/+1 counters on Marath. That would be okay, but I can do it to all my creatures. So if you have like a Colonian Hydra or an Archangel of Thune, there are so many good creatures that get +1/+1 counters. There's so many ways to put +1/+1 counters on creatures. There's so many green decks that deal in +1/+1 counters.
The list goes on.
It's such a good utility spell for those kind of decks.
Next, we have Chariot of Victory. It's not Lightning Greaves, because it's not going to give your guy Shroud, but it is going to give him First Strike, Trample, and Haste, for one equip cost.
Also, there's the flavor of imagining whatever creature it's equipped to riding the Chariot. So, like, if you have some huge creature that's just would actually crush the Chariot. My favorite, though, if you have a Squirrel token. Next is Disciple of Deceit. And like a lot of the inspired cards, you're going to have to work around it. If you work around this guy, it gives you free Transmute. Transmute is one of the best mechanics to come out of the original Ravnica block for Commander, because tutors are really good. This just in. Yeah, you're going to have to put some work into it, but blue-black decks, especially those of the more budget variety, this is fantastic. If you can't afford Demonic Tutor, Vampiric Tutor, Grim Tutor, you can work for Disciple of Deceit, especially if you stick it in the early game. You can get whatever you want. And unlike Transmute, you don't actually have to pay any mana, you just have to discard it.
Next, we have Mana Confluence. It's great mana fixing. Granted, you're going to be paying 1 life, but if you're playing a 5-color deck, Mana Confluence is another great card. It's going to give you the mana you need.
And last on our honorable mentions, possibly for sheer epicness and flavor, is Bearer of the Heavens. He was going to be top 10, but then I realized he didn't say destroy all non-land permanents. He says destroy all permanents. And the decision to blow up lands takes a little more deck building forethought and play skill than just blowing up all non-land permanents. But this guy's like the ultimate rattlesnake card.
One of the great things about a lot of rattlesnake cards aren't that threatening at first. They're only threatening until you get close to the end of the game, and then you have something you have to deal with. Bearer of the Heavens is a 10/10. Okay, yeah, he doesn't have trample, but you know the Chariot that I was telling you guys about earlier? Throw the Chariot on this guy, and all of a sudden, people have to deal with him. So he's a great rattlesnake card. They don't want to deal with him. They'd rather just take the 10 damage sometimes.
And it's even better if you have a way to make your stuff indestructible, even if it's just a Boros Charm or something like that to make your creatures indestructible.
And now we're going to discuss our top 10 most relevant cards in Commander.
At number 10, we have Prophetic Flame Speaker. And this guy is a red card that I'm pretty excited for, so that alone gets him a slot in top 10. He's got double strike and trample, so I don't think I have to tell you that you put some sort of artifact or enchantment on him and he's going to be ridiculous. He's good in combat, and he's good at digging you through your library. He's got a really good converted mana cost. He's only 3.
Prophetic Flame Speaker is one of those cards that I think is going to be surprisingly scary.
I think you should play him in Zozu.
At number 9, we have Polymorphous Rush. There's just so many funny, hilarious stories that are going to be happening with this card. If there is a decent creature on the field, turning all your creatures into that creature...
Mirror Weave does this, but it's hybrid blue-white, so that really restricts the number of decks you can play it in. Whereas this can get played in mono blue, it can get played in multicolor decks with blue that don't have white. It's
going to be played in Rug, like Riku decks, or I think that seems very Riku to me.
Yes. At number 8, we have Battlefield Thaumaturge. And at first we were like, maybe this guy's an honorable mention, he's pretty sweet. But then we're like, wait a minute, Curse of the Swine. Like, you just rapid baconization the entire field for double blue.
You can Aurelia's Fury, the entire table for 1 for just red and white.
Any card that says, target any number of target creatures, get this, X target creatures, any cards that say that are instants and sorceries, are really good with this guy. So, yeah, he's corner case, but he's easy to build around. Because you just go out of your way to find cards that are good with him.
And he protects himself, because on top of it all, he has the heroic ability where he gives himself hexproof. Like a lot of the Strive cards that we talked about in our honorable mentions and stuff like that are also great with this guy. So, yeah, he's awesome. We like him a lot. At number 7, we have Worst Fears. So many people that I know personally were kind of disappointed that the card exiles itself because these people enjoy doing terrible and awful things. Whether or not you guys like the effect this card has, when we talk about Commander games, the crazy stuff that happens in Commander games, maybe you're just about to lose the game and you top deck a Worst Fears and it saves you. It doesn't feel unfair to take control of one player's turn once. Not as unfair as recurring a Mindslaver.
Yeah, like Academy Ruins, Mindslaver just wins the game all on its own.
Yeah, that's just unfair. Worst Fears doesn't feel unfair. It feels mean, but it's not unfair.
At number 6, we have Hydra Broodmaster. So, she's Gelatinous Genesis on a body. And Gelatinous Genesis is a solid commander card, but when it's on a creature, that makes it so much easier to recur, because you can flicker her, and she's no longer monstrous, and you can do it again, and again, and again. I mean, put this chick in Karametra, or put her in Omnath. You can just make an enormous army of creatures, and yeah, you can only do it once, but there's so many ways to get around that.
For you Timmy Commander players, Hydra Broodmaster is like a dream come true. You can just put all the mana in, make tons of big fatties. The only downside is they don't have trample, but that's easily remedied as well. Next up, we have second place for one of the coolest names of any card in the set. It is Silence the Believers. Black already got Guild the last set. And then we have this one, which almost outclasses Guild.
Which makes me sad, because Guild is full of flavor and awesomeness, and then they're like, let's just make almost strictly better than Guild in the next set. So yeah, Guild replaces itself with mana, but this is an instant, and you can target more than one creature for more mana. At number 4, we have the Dictate cycle. Dictate of Heliod, Kruphix, Erebos, the Twin Gods, and Karametra. So, I really like this cycle, but it kind of really illustrates my problem with this set. Why I think it's underwhelming. Not because it's bad, or because there aren't good cards, but nearly every card in this set that we've mentioned, we've been able to say, oh, it's like this card. It's almost a functional reprint of this card. It's very similar to this card. So that's why we know these cards are good, because nearly every card that we've mentioned has some sort of extremely similar counterpart, some of them to the point of being functional reprints. That being said, these cards are still very good, especially the black and the red ones. The blue one's obviously good in Nekasar, and it's good in group hug decks. Dictate of Heliod's good in token decks, aggro decks. Dictate of Karametra, I'm not crazy about, because I hate group hug effects, especially ones that are mana doublers, but some people love that stuff.
A card that is, we've seen him before, but he's new, is Ajani, Mentor of Heroes. I squeed a little bit inside whenever I saw this guy. Ajani is my favorite planeswalker. He has 2+1 abilities, which is not that common. Both of them are fantastic. You can just go ahead and pump a creature, and it allows you to dig for 3 permanents that are very good in white and green. And to top it all off, he has something that's just so over the top, so Commander in its own way, because Commander is the game of 100, and so gaining 100 life in Commander seems very fitting.
At number 2, we have Sage of Hours, and he's BFFs with Ajani. I don't know if you guys knew that, but this guy is so combolicious. Where he's really gonna shine is if you just go infinite with him. Because if you have Sage of Hours, and Ajani, and Vorl of the Hulklade, you have infinite turns. But that's such a great commander thing, as a card that lets you go infinite, but it's like a 3 or 4 card combo. Unlike some combo cards, or cards that I know are going to be annoying, like, let's say Lighthouse Chronologist. That guy's just, do you have blue mana? That's what you do with Lighthouse Chronologist. You've actually got to put some work into this guy beyond, I can make blue mana, guys.
At number 1, we have a very epic card in Godsend.
So let's break down the stats. You've got the same cast and equip as Lockstone Warhammer. So not my favorite. 3 is a little steep on the equip, but if the equipment's good enough, it's worth it. Yeah, it's the anti-god card, but let's face it, most of the gods you're facing in Commander are commanders, probably. So exiling them doesn't get rid of them. Leaving that aside, no one wants to block your guy if it's got this, or no one wants to attack you. Just put it on something with vigilance.
There's an argument that Godsend isn't nearly as good as it could be because it's white, but I think because it's white, it's actually better, because this is not a card that you're going to be seeing at every single table with every single deck. Sure, white Voltron decks are some of the best Voltron decks out there. This is not going to be a staple like Lightning Greaves or Swiftfoot Boots. I think that's a good thing, because this card is way too powerful to be a staple. This would be way too hard to get for a lot of people. So that was our take on the most relevant cards that will go into your 99. We'll have another video taking a look at the potential generals of Journey into Nyx soon. Until then, I'm Karston.
And I'm Brionne.
And thanks for watching.